The Carthaxian cubs were supposed to be the most dangerous juvenile predators in the known galaxy. Their species had conquered 12 star systems through sheer ferocity and tactical brilliance. Yet here they were on Forward Base Artemis, wearing Lyra Chen's aviator sunglasses and investigating a stolen ration pack incident with the seriousness of seasoned detectives. Lyra watched from the observation deck as the three cubs, each no larger than a terrestrial wolf but infinitely more lethal, prowled the cargo bay. Their obsidian scales glinted under the fluorescent lights, and her oversized sunglasses sat precariously on their elongated snouts. She couldn't help but smile. "This is your fault," Mason Rodriguez said, approaching with 2 cups of coffee. The security chief looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes betraying another sleepless night. "You realize they've conducted 17 investigations this week alone?" 18, Lyra corrected, accepting the coffee gratefully. "They just opened a case about the mysterious smell in Base 7. Mason groaned. "That's the waste recycler. It always smells. Try telling them that." The situation had begun 3 weeks ago when the Carthaxian ambassador had arrived with her offspring for the diplomatic summit. The cubs were meant to remain in the secured diplomatic quarters, but Carthaxian young were notoriously curious. They'd escaped within hours and the base had gone into immediate lockdown. That's when Lyra had made her mistake, or her greatest achievement, depending on perspective. She'd found the cubs in the rec room hissing at their reflection in a mirror. Instead of calling security, she'd sat down and calmly removed her sunglasses, placing them on the nearest cub's face. The transformation had been instantaneous. The aggressive posturing ceased. The cub tilted its head, examining its reflection with what could only be described as fascination. Within minutes, all 3 cubs were fighting over the sunglasses. Lyra had replicated 2 more pairs from the fabricator, and just like that, the most dangerous predator cubs in the galaxy became the base's self-appointed investigation team. "The ambassador wants to see you again," Mason said, breaking her reverie. Lyra sighed. Ambassador Krathix had been alternating between fury and confusion for weeks. Her cubs had shown no interest in their traditional warrior training since discovering what humans called detective work. They'd even started making little case files using stolen data pads. In the diplomatic suite, Ambassador Krathix stood at her full 8-foot height, her scales displaying patterns of agitation. The cubs sat in a neat row behind her, sunglasses perched professionally on their snouts, notepads ready. Specialist Chen, the ambassador's translator, rendered her clicking speech into crisp English. "My offspring have declined their combat training for the 3rd consecutive day. They insist they have cases to solve. This is unacceptable." "With respect, Ambassador," Lyra began. "Quiet." The largest cub, whom the base had nicknamed Detective Snaps, stood up. "Mother, we have breaking news. The missing ration packs. We've solved it." The ambassador's scales rippled with what Lyra had learned to recognize as exasperation. "I do not care about— It was the ventilation system." Another cub, Inspector Razor, declared proudly. "The seals were faulty. The packs weren't stolen. They were sucked into the ductwork during pressure equalization cycles." Mason's eyebrows shot up. "Wait, what?" The 3rd cub, the smallest but somehow the most authoritative, whom they called Captain Fang, projected a hologram from a stolen datapad. "We have evidence. 13 missing ration packs, all during scheduled maintenance cycles. We retrieved them from Junction 7 Alpha." Lyra watched Mason's expression shift from skepticism to astonishment as he verified the data. "They're right. We've been investigating this for months. We thought we had a thief." "The evidence was obvious," Detective Snap said, adjusting his sunglasses with a foreclaw. "Humans simply don't observe properly." Ambassador Krathix stood frozen, her translator silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a different tone. "You solved an actual mystery?" "We solve many mysteries," Captain Fang replied with unmistakable pride. "Yesterday we discovered why the lights flicker in Sector 9. Faulty relay junction box needs replacement. Tuesday we found the source of the water leak in the gymnasium, cracked pipe behind panel 47. Monday we identified which human keeps leaving trash in the— Enough. The ambassador's scales flashed through a rainbow of colors Lyra couldn't interpret. She paced the room, her massive tail swishing. Finally she turned to Lyra. "Explain this. How have my cubs, bred for generations as warriors, became What is the human word? Detectives, Lyra supplied. This concept, detection. Explain its value. Lyra chose her words carefully. Ambassador, your species conquered through strength and direct confrontation. But humans learned that many battles are won before they're fought. Intelligence gathering, problem solving, understanding systems and patterns. These are weapons too. Your cubs haven't abandoned their warrior nature. They've expanded it. Mason nodded, catching on. They still use their enhanced senses, their pack tactics, their strategic thinking. They've just redirected it. The mechanical failure in Bay 7, Detective Snaps interjected, could have caused an explosion. We identified it. We prevented catastrophe. Is that not warrior work? Ambassador Krathix was silent for a long time. Her scales slowly shifted to a deep blue that Lyra's cultural briefing had indicated meant contemplation. My people have conquered through force. But maintaining those conquests, there have been challenges, insurgencies we cannot find, supply chains we cannot protect, infrastructure failures we cannot predict. Problems that need detectives, Lyra said softly. The ambassador looked at her cubs who sat at attention, sunglasses gleaming. And these, detective tools, the sunglasses, they are significant. They help us think like humans, Inspector Razor explained. Humans observe everything. They notice small details. The sunglasses remind us to see as they see. Lyra bit back a laugh. The sunglasses were just sunglasses, but if the cubs found confidence and focus in them, who was she to argue? Very well, the ambassador decided. The cubs will continue their detective work, under one condition. She fixed Lyra with an intense stare. You will teach them properly, and you will teach our people this skill when we return home. Mason choked on his coffee. You want us to train Carthaxian detectives? An entire division, the ambassador confirmed. If my cubs can find leaking pipes and faulty relays, imagine what a trained force could accomplish. We have an empire to maintain, Specialist Chen. Perhaps it is time we learn to fight battles that do not involve claws. 3 weeks later, as the Carthaxian delegation prepared to depart, Detective Snaps approached Lyra one final time. He carefully removed his sunglasses and placed them in her hand. Keep them, Lyra insisted. Every detective needs their tools. The cub's scales rippled with what she'd learned was Carthaxian amusement. We have our own now. Mother had 5,000 pairs made. The detective corps begins training next month. He paused. Thank you, Lyra Chen, for teaching us that warriors can fight with observation and deduction. As their ship departed, Mason stood beside Lyra, shaking his head in disbelief. We just fundamentally altered Carthaxian military doctrine with a pair of aviator sunglasses. Lyra grinned. Humanity, Fawaz, yeah. The cub's final case report sat on her datapad. The mystery of why humans smile so much. Conclusion, because they find joy in unexpected places. Case closed.